Welcome to the Campus Live. My name is Sally Sitole, and we are in the month of October celebrating African Pride Month. And with me today, I have such an interesting guest. Joining me is a businesswoman, a model, an entrepreneur. Oh my goodness, I'm repeating that, but an entrepreneur, yes. The founder of Stride Institute, and she's doing a whole lot of things. You might have seen her on one of the biggest stages in the modeling industry. And today, she's on the stage, in the studio with me. Welcome, Tsulani.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait to find out more about you and what you've been up to. But before, when we start, can we talk about who are you, where do you come from, and so forth?
So I am from Eqabeja in the Eastern Cape. I am a proud product of New Brighton Township, and I moved to Johannesburg in 2018 when I was crowned Miss Mamelodi Sundowns. I currently work as an artist agent full-time, and I'm a voiceover artist, model, and businesswoman.
I like it. So, Miss Sundowns, the modeling industry, and you are managing artist. Where did that passion all come from? Or where did it all start? When did you realize that, you know what, this is what I was born to do?
I think any person who's ever been interested in modeling as a kid will always attest it to America's Next Top Model. So whenever I used to watch the show, I would mimic the things that I was seeing, and I think from then it sparked an interest. And as I grew older, I then realized that the industry is either in Cape Town or Johannesburg if you are trying to make it within entertainment. And for me, how I then got into pageantry is coming from New Brighton Township. When I looked at my circumstances, my first pageant was actually one that I did in church. And it was always about identifying the issues that you are seeing in your community and how do you become that change. So pageantry is something that I've used to then shape South Africa in the way that I want to see it and myself represented in it.
I love that. And you are the founder of Stride Institute.
Yes.
Still in the modeling industry as well. Why did you start the company, and what gap do you think you're filling with your company?
So I started Stride informally in 2018 when I was crowned Miss Mamelodi Sundowns. I think when I visited schools in Soshanguve, Atteridgeville, Mamelodi through the Miss Sundowns program, a lot of young people want to get into entertainment, and they had a lot of questions as to how I, coming from the Eastern Cape, had become, you know, the yellow queen for Mamelodi Sundowns, which is based in Pretoria in terms of its roots. So sharing that knowledge in terms of, you know, how I've shaped the choices that I make and how I chose to affiliate with a brand like Mamelodi Sundowns was something that I would do in schools. And then when I later became signed to a modeling agency and I was going out for auditions, etc., I then realized that there's so much information that people don't know. And often Google is not enough because you just see different agencies popping up, but it doesn't tell you what it is they specialize in, etc. So what Stride Institute does is for upcoming young people, but even anyone who's older who has a dream of entering modeling, we can train you. If you are someone who's doing pageants and want a coach, we can do that. But most importantly, it's a confidence building and public speaking institution where we train you in skills that you can use in many different parts of your life.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot. So as a young leader, leading, of course, the young youth into the entertainment industry, the media industry, and so forth, going back to you, something that I researched that really sparked my interest is that you have aspirations of becoming the president of South Africa.
In the year 2044.
In the year 2044. We still have a lot of years to go until we get to that specific year. Just walking through the aspirations of why you want to become the president, and once you become the president, what form of change are you going to bring to the country?
I think our inner child dreams are unmatched because they're innocent and they're so true in what we see. As a young person, I grew up always asking my mom, how do people become presidents? Like, what schools do people like Ndade, former president Thabo Mbeki, like, where did they school? Like, that was the question I grew up asking. And my mom always used to say, there's no school for presidents. It's how you choose to serve your community. It's how you choose to be a part of the change that you want to see. And from then onwards, you know, I decided that I wanted to be president, and I wanted to, you know, be the change that I wanted to see within New Brighton Township, for instance, and my community, and using then the platforms that I was then exposed to through school and societies, etc. And many programs that I've gotten involved with from the time I was in primary school, including one called Masifunde, which was all about, you know, equalizing the education system. When you look at former Model C schools and what is happening in our townships, how do we create societies and just the quality of education when it comes to things like that? So from a young age, I was very determined, and I think what sealed it for me is when I had a dream and I told my mom I could see myself older, and in this dream behind me there was a banner that said 2044, and I remember she joked about it in the beginning, but when she shared the dream with her colleagues and I was still in primary, they were like, if everything goes according to plan, 2044 is actually an election year, so perhaps you shouldn't discard, you know, this young person's dream. And since then, you know, I've just manifested 2044 into a train in motion, where it's about, in all the spaces that I find myself working in, how am I the change? How am I the representation?
I like that. But is there anything specific that you're doing political-wise that's leading you to 2044?
I think politically I am affiliated. I would think of myself as a fighter.
Okay.
But more than anything, for me, it's looking like I work in the modeling industry. I'm an artist agent. I also am a board member for SAPAMA, which is a union. So how am I using the creative space that I am in to create change and to, you know, advocate for artist rights, which is an issue in South Africa. I mean, our legends are still not being compensated what they need to be. And when you look at the different bills that are being passed, I don't think the right people are often sometimes the ones spearheading it, because they're not necessarily in the industry or understand what it's like to be freelancers. So I try and use the spaces that I'm in to be the change.
I like that. But now let's address controversies that were surrounding you last year, 2022. You entered Miss South Africa, made it to the top 30. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But then, while we're still celebrating, then the celebratory mode started to decrease a little bit, right? Because of, I want to say, allegations are surrounding you. Do you want to talk about that? So basically, yeah, I think I'll give you the opportunity to talk about it.
Sheesh, Miss South Africa has been a dream of mine since I was small. I think anyone who knows me will tell you that presidency and Miss South Africa is something from all the stages that I've ever gotten an opportunity to stand on, I've boldly affirmed and aspired towards. And when I entered last year, it was a dream come true, making it to firstly top 30. But even prior to that, my entry video within the first day had over 10,000 views and comments, and just that feeling of people that you haven't spoken to in years reminding you of how you've been working towards that moment was something I will always be proud of. And you're right, you know, as soon as the top 30 was announced, there was a tweet. I remember getting to the office, I think on the 17th of May last year.
Yeah.
And still in celebratory mode, my colleagues celebrating me, and someone just sent me a screenshot to say, you know, there's a tweet that says, Thulani Nzogyana can't be Miss South Africa, she's a rape apologist. And I think firstly when I saw it, I was like, what is a rape apologist? Like, what is this about?
I've never heard about it.
You know, and then I obviously Googled what rape apologist is, and then a few other screenshots started coming in, because at the time I wasn't on the platform Twitter. And I was really taken aback, and most importantly, triggered, in that I realized that a rape apologist, you are basically saying that I have sided with someone who's committed a rape crime. And not only have I done that, I've victimized or I've bullied the survivor / victim. And that wasn't true. So I think all the turmoil that then came afterwards, and just hearing things that weren't true, like, I think the things that I read, I was like, where do people get this? It was really shocking and really defamatory, to put it bluntly. But for me as a woman, also very hurtful, because I think before you are even a major and are 18 in South Africa, you are exposed to the issues around rape and what is happening to women. So to be a part of a problem, or to be accused of being someone who would look down on another woman or say things like she deserved it, like those were some of the things that I read, was really triggering and hurtful for me, but also really upsetting because it wasn't true. But it felt like for 2 full days, which I was training on TikTok, it just not TikTok, Twitter, it just kept getting out of hand, the things that I was reading. But I think what I took away from it is that sometimes we will be guilty by association. So the fact that this was someone I was dating from high school into my first year, which happened in 2017, and at the time we were together when he got arrested, that's all people needed to know. The fact is, I still don't know what happened. I've never spoken to that person. They've never told me this is what happened. It was an ongoing case. All I chose to do was stay silent, because from the very beginning, if you go back to those 2017 Facebook posts, tweets, articles, it was a big thing because he was playing sport and people were trying to drag me into it already because I was Miss Mamelodi Sundowns, Eastern Cape at the time. I remember in 2017 December getting a call from Mamelodi Sundowns saying, we're being tagged and they're saying that you're dating a rapist, because that's how it was phrased before 2022, where it was now phrased as me being a rape apologist. And I then explained to Mamelodi Sundowns, yes, that this is what was happening, but I don't know. This is what I do know, that they got arrested, and the survivor is also someone I do know, and I'm trying, to hear as much as I can, but at this point, this is what I know. And I remember them asking me, so what are you going to do? And I said, well, I don't know what's happened, so I'm definitely going to distance myself from this person. And should they reach out or tell me what's happened, then from then onwards, I'll be able to move forward. But that never happened. Okay. And going past that, even going into Miss Sundowns, mentally, I was not okay. I was being bullied from December 2017. I think what silenced the people who were bullying me then and saying I'm dating a rapist, was the fact that I won Miss Mamelodi Sundowns, because Sundowns was able to see that this is a crime that wasn't created by me. I firstly was not even at the scene. I don't know what's happened. What I do know is also what I've read, the voice notes that were circulating in Port Elizabeth about what happened from the people who had attended the party at the time. At the time, even for me as a brand, I'm representing Mamelodi Sundowns, I was very deliberate about the spaces that I would choose to go to. So I was very grateful that they were able to see the full picture when it came to that. But I think heading back to 2022, South Africans only saw a tweet and people then just jumped on the bandwagon.
Related to cancel culture, how did you now respond to the criticism and people calling you to withdraw from the competition? How did you, and your mental space as well, where were you with all of that?
I think mentally it hit me after Miss South Africa ended. But during the time that I was a top 30 finalist, I felt fine because I was confided in the truth. And I think in that time, many of my family members and friends who were around in 2017 when all of this started breaking out and knew the truth also were affirming me, but that this is not true. You've never uttered these statements. You've not done this. So you can't let something that's not true about you. You need to show up as the best version of you. And perhaps this will be a story to tell because we see it all the time. We've made a norm of Black Twitter in South Africa, like diminishing and breaking down people. So for me, I thought, oh, okay, this is part of the journey. But after Miss South Africa ended, I think I definitely was emotionally not okay, to a point where it felt like everything I do would be attached to something that had absolutely nothing to do with me and that I knew nothing about. Because obviously, as soon as I left the top 30, people continued bullying me, saying, we told you 2044 is not going to happen, and all the negative stuff still trickled in weeks after that. So I felt a little, thrown off. But I think through prayer, family, and knowing your truth, I was able to just continue showing up for myself.
I like that. But in the light of controversy, right? And we can't ignore the fact that gender-based violence is real. We're living in it. But as a public figure, especially to like a person who young people look up to, young girls in the modeling industry and so forth, what kind of measures or steps have you taken? Because there's a lot of hashtags, hashtag am I next, me too. Have you done anything related
I think
to that?
For me, when I looked at those hashtags, I even took it a step further, where I used to always post, and I still do till today. If there's something happening in our country that I think we need to be vocal about, I am that person. And what I've done, and even prior to entering Miss South Africa, I had the opportunity in 2020 to be part of the UN Red Card campaign, which was affiliated to football, but it was about women giving a red card to gender-based violence. And I was so fortunate that I got to be a part of a conference that was showcasing internationally and to give my voice, where I had written a speech, because I also am a writer, about ending gender-based violence. So I think that's something I've always had to be vocal about because I'm a woman too. And I think that was one of the other parts mentally I had to deal with after being called a rape apologist, because it's like my experiences as a woman, as a black woman in this country who is constantly exposed to so much, especially working in the industry that I'm in, to be seen or ever put in a box that could be something that I would do is not something I take any pride in, because I know the realities that are happening within the industry and just for South African women. So I continue to be vocal, and I continue to work with different organizations that say no to gender-based violence, like the UN Red Card campaign that I had worked for. And even for Stride, actually, when I launched it in 2020, I took the Red Card campaigns that were sent with me and I educated them on how they can pledge. Fortunately, when my Stride ambassadors launched, it was a mixture of girls and boys. And for me, it was about having that conversation. So I even have footage where we speak about gender-based violence and we use that as a way of them doing public speaking, but speaking against it. But what do they know? How can men get involved? How do we not leave out the boy child?
You know, you just answered my next question. I was about to ask, as a role model in South Africa, what measures are you taking, you know, to raise this kind of flags as well, and to like advice for women who are also going through controversies or challenges in the media space, and they're going through cancel culture and so forth. But I think you've kind of summed it up. Yeah, I think you did. But now shifting the focus to your career, let's talk more about the Stride Institute. Okay. Right, because I also saw you were part of the not the organizing, but orchestrating Ms. UJTV as well, and you were part of the main judges. Yes. How, when it comes to that opportunity as well, women empowerment and empowering women in the space, like what does it really mean for you?
I think for me, I've realized that I'm an instrument in this industry when it comes to pageantry. I usually refer to myself as the Olivia Pope of pageantry. Okay. And I've seen it come in full circle. So prior to me entering Miss SA, I've trained girls who've made it to top 5 in Miss South Africa, even currently. So that is something that firstly I don't take for granted. But even as my role as an artist agent, I've had the privilege of being able to represent, advise, and just give industry knowledge that I would not know if I was just a model in the industry. Where, how do we break down usages? How are we protecting you in contracts? They paying for exclusivity and all these different things, because we're moving to a world that is fast-paced, and if you have a following, it's very easy for brands to want to work with you, but it's also easy for you to come across as someone or be exploited if you don't have the knowledge, because they will ask you certain questions and state what it is they want to do with your imaging. And if you're not knowledgeable, it's easy for you to think, let's price it at this amount, and then that's your image and brand alignment, and you can't work with similar brands. So I've been fortunate that even outside of pageantry, the work that I do as an artist agent is able to help either brands that have built themselves through pageantry or modeling. So that is something that I'm very passionate about. But Stride Institute was birthed in 2018, but I formalized it in 2020. As soon as we got a little bit of room with COVID-19, I did my first workshop in Gqeberha, where I invited models and people who wanted to know about the modeling industry to apply, went through those applications, sponsored a workshop, and just trained them to give them those industry opportunities. Until this day, I've gotten the opportunity of working with a brand like UJ and, being part of Miss UJ APK, training their finalists not only in pageantry. Yes, the walking is great, but being able to firstly Q&A. Are you understanding current affairs? Are you able to form an opinion? Outside of that, are you able to represent your brand so that even if you don't win, the aspirations that live inside of you are still fired up? And that is something that I get to do, which is great.
I love that. I love that. But let's talk as an entrepreneur, right? The challenges that you face in the industry that you're in. And I know it's an industry where a lot of people have questions, because I'm a model myself, and getting into the modeling industry, I think my family had they were skeptical about a lot of things, because there's a lot of stories about modeling industry related to human trafficking and, so forth. But as an entrepreneur, how are you dealing with those challenges of parents maybe coming to you and raising their concerns?
So for me, firstly, I think I was also a victim to that, where when I moved in 2018, I was applying to all the different agencies. Obviously, obviously the goal is always ice and boss models coming from PE. That's all I knew.
Yeah.
And then you don't necessarily get into those agencies. So I applied to them, got rejected to both, and then applied to various industries. And Google will give you loads of options.
Yeah.
So I then was signed to an agency that claimed to be an acting agency. I did an audition, paid for portfolio shoots, training. Thousands and thousands of rands later, only to just be put in a group chat where a lot of the work was very vague, sketchy, and in weird parts of town. And I think that's firstly something that I'm always very mindful and cautioning my striders. Is the agency you're applying to represented by a union? Because if they are, a lot of the time you're almost going to find that the briefs are legit, the venues are safe, there is crew, there's production, there's a whole team coming together to make the modeling campaigns work. But there are also people out there within modeling who are trying to put a name for themselves and are doing campaigns that firstly don't have the budgets, don't have the safety concerns in mind, and those are being put in group chats and sometimes being shared, and it's an open casting. You are not necessarily getting signed to an agency, you want to go to it. So I'm very, 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 very articulate in terms of how models can protect themselves when they're unsigned, because the reality is there's thousands of people who come to Johannesburg every year, I would believe, who think they can also model, or let's say hundreds. And those agencies already have 300, 400 people. So the intake every year is about 20, depending on the agency. Unless they're a money-making agency, then they'll take all of you if you can pay for portfolios. But the intake is not always great. Then you find yourself, you have this talent, you want to model or you want to act, but you don't have an agency. Then you start finding yourself on these group chats, telegrams, any other way that is outside the industry but is still within the industry in terms of how people share. And those are the spaces that can be very unsafe for women, for girls, for pageant queens. It's very important to know, like, who is this organization owned by and the history. And I think sometimes we get lost in crown chasing, or we get lost in sash chasing, or just any opportunity chasing, that we expose ourselves to things that can be dangerous. So Stride Institute is also about preventing that.
I like that. Speaking about crown chasing and sash chasing, you are Miss Grand South Africa first runner-up. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So what is the future looking like for you as an individual, for you as an entrepreneur, for you as a political, aspiring to be the president? How is the future looking like?
Well, firstly, I want to implore young people to register. I know everyone at the moment is very, who do I vote for? So without influencing you, I would just say the first step is just to register. Next year, we need to vote. It is a big, big year. And I think we've experienced so much unemployment. I have unemployed graduates as friends at the moment, and that is something that I don't take for granted. You know, there's so much that is happening to young people and women that is leaving us out of the conversation, which continues to put us in places that can expose us because of lack of opportunities that we're not getting. So with that in mind, I think everyone should register and then start doing their own research. And then for me as a businesswoman, I want to grow Stride Institute to a point where it can compete with some of South Africa's biggest agencies. I think I work for the biggest agency in South Africa, Talent ETC. I'm the HOD. We have a division in KZN, Johannesburg, and an office in Cape Town as well. And we're representing some of the biggest artists within the country. So what I want Stride to do within modeling, conferencing, public speaking, event spaces, is to be, you know, that face of change where even some of the outliers, because I've always believed I'm an outlier. My hair, I've got dreadlocks, you don't see it now because of the faux locks that I have, but I was told, you know, in my journey in modeling, which took 2 years before I booked my first proper campaign, that maybe if I cut my hair, maybe if I lost more weight and it was the body type, I've always just been told that I don't fit the mold, even in pageantry. And I want Stride to create a safe place for that, because finally the world is readjusting, but we're not going to wait for it to fully adjust to what we think are beauty standards. We're going to create opportunity and spaces for that, and that's what I try and do for my striders.
I like that. Thank you so much, Tilani. I really, really appreciate you coming here and getting to know you more. But before I let you go, though, I want you to look into the camera.
Which one?
Which one? This one. This one, right? And I want you to speak to someone who's looking up to you. Yeah, in just the, you know,
If you are looking up to me, I want to say to you that the journey of whatever dreams you may have is not always going to be rosy, but if they keep you up at night, they're absolutely worth you having. I want you to affirm yourself, to speak kindly to yourself, because even in the darkest moments, those affirmations that you've trained your heart, mind, and brain to believe will keep you going. And I want you to invest in community. I saw it during my Miss Grand South Africa journey, when every month I was part of the people who were top voters, and it wasn't because I was voting for myself, but it was the community from Gqeberha and all the places that I've managed to set my foot in that kept me going. So please,
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Tulani Njotyana. I hope I said it right.
Yes,
I did. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Until I see you next time on TV.
Absolutely.
Maybe we'll be voting for you in 2044. You never know.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is where we leave it for today. This is the Campus Life. My name is Selisa Toli. Until I see you next time, goodbye.
The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.